Welcome to Backbone Unlimited. My name is Matt Hartsky. In this episode, we're going to break down how to master elk scouting so fast it almost feels like cheating. Because if you've spent any time trying to figure this out on your own, you know how overwhelming it can be. You open up a map, you start dropping pins, you mark basins, ridges, bedding areas, water, and before long, you've got a screen full of options, but no real plan. And when you finally get into the field, it doesn't translate. You're moving, you're checking spots, you're second guessing everything, and it still feels like guessing. And that's the problem. Most hunters aren't struggling because scouting is too complicated. They're struggling because they're doing it without a system. If you're not familiar with who I am, I've been hunting and guiding Western big game for over 34 years, and I've been a professional strength conditioning and nutrition coach for more than 30 years, and I'm here to help you become a more successful and consistent elk hunter and outdoorsman. After more than 34 years of hunting Western big game, I can tell you this: the fastest way to improve isn't just trying to learn more. It's learning how to filter what actually matters. So in this episode, I'm going to show you how to eliminate bad country fast, identify real movement, and turn your scouting into something you can actually hunt. Because once that clicks, everything is going to speed up for you. Most elk scouting doesn't fail because hunters aren't trying hard enough. It fails because they're doing the wrong thing with the information they collect. They open a map, they start identifying those basins and marking ridges, they're dropping pins all over the place like on water or bedding areas or feeding zones, really anything that looks like it could be elky, right? And the more they do it, the more confident they feel until they actually get into the field, and then they have more questions, right? Because now they're surrounded by options, but no real direction. 10, 20 pins, 50 pins, and no real idea where to go first or why. And that's the problem. They're collecting information instead of filtering it. And without a system, more information doesn't create clarity. It creates hesitation and second guessing, constant movement through the mountains, and a lot of indecision because every spot looks like it could work, but none of them are really connected to a plan. So most hunters are scouting, but not deciding. And until that changes, nothing really speeds up because the goal of scouting is not to find more places. It's really to eliminate the wrong ones, so the right ones will actually stand out to you. If you want to get better at elk scouting fast, you have to flip your approach. Stop trying to find elk and start eliminating where they are definitely not, because the biggest mistake hunters make is treating the entire unit like it's huntable and then trying to narrow it down later. And that's backwards, in my opinion. The fastest way to create clarity is to remove 70 to 90% of the terrain immediately, that bad stuff. Not because it looks bad necessarily, but because it doesn't meet the standards that elk require to survive under pressure. So let's start with wind. If the terrain doesn't offer predictable wind behavior, you should probably eliminate it, right? Then look at security. If it's too open, too exposed, or lacks cover elk can trust during daylight, you should probably eliminate it. Next, evaluate feed and bedding. If those two are spread too far apart, forcing long exposed movement for the elk, try to eliminate that, at least initially. And finally, consider pressure. If it's easily accessed, highly visible, or likely hunted, try to eliminate that for now as well. Now what you're left with isn't just random, it's more focused, and it's huntable, and it's higher odds. Great scouting is about what you ignore, because once you remove what doesn't work, what does work becomes a lot more obvious. If you don't understand how elk actually use terrain, nothing you do on a map is going to hold up in the field either. So that's why a lot of my videos focus on elk behavior. At the surface level, everybody knows the pattern, right? Feed, they transition, and then they bed, right? And then back out the opposite way in the evening. But the real detail is how they move between those points. Elk are not picking locations based on just some preference. They're making survival decisions, and that's why you see mid-slope dominance. Gives them efficient movement, quick access to feed below, bedding above perhaps, and a consistent wind advantage. They rely heavily on edge environments, not wide open spaces, but not deep impenetrable cover all the time either. That in-between stuff, that's the sweet spot. Areas where they can move with security while still monitoring their surroundings. Everything really comes down to movement efficiency versus their exposure for that security. They want the easiest path that still keeps them protected, and that path is almost always shaped by wind. Elk position themselves to maintain a wind advantage at all times. Whether they're bedding, feeding, or traveling, if the terrain doesn't allow them to control scent, they probably won't use it at least consistently. And that's the key. Elk don't use terrain randomly, they use it more predictably. And that's really the key that you have to understand. They aren't random. We can predict them to a large extent because every decision they make is tied to one thing: survival. And this is the shift that starts to change everything in elk scouting. Hey, if you hunt public land elk and you're tired of grinding through random seasons, I built the elk hunting series of ebooks for you. Most hunters don't struggle because they lack effort. They struggle because they lack a system. And that's exactly why I built the elk hunting ebook series as a complete progressive framework for Western elk hunters who are done guessing and ready to hunt with intention. Volume 1 is going to be Foundations and Reality. I reset your mindset and expose the assumptions that quietly wreck seasons. In Volume 2, Finding Elk and Understanding Pressure, you'll learn how elk actually move under pressure so you can anticipate instead of react. In Volume 3, Terrain, Wind, and Position, I break down how to use landscape and thermals to consistently create opportunities. In Volume 4, Calling, Silence, and Pressure, sound becomes a decision tool, not an impulse. In Volume 5, Bow Hunting Execution, we're talking about close range strategy so you can finish your encounters. And in Volume 6, Late Season and Post Rut, we're talking about how elk shift after the rut and how to adapt when others quit. This is a system built for consistency. This isn't theory, it's a structured system to help you find elk, read country, and make confident decisions every season. Buy each volume individually or bundle them all to save 50% off at backboneunlimited.com. Most elk hunters are looking for locations. Maybe it's basins, meadows, maybe bedding areas if they're starting to get a little bit more advanced. They're trying to identify where elk could be, but that approach keeps you stuck, right? It holds you back because elk don't stay in one place. And even when they do, they're rarely exposed in a way you can hunt. The real opportunity here isn't in static locations, it's in movement. You need to start scouting for how elk travel through terrain, that elk behavior. That means identifying travel routes, transition corridors, terrain decision points. Those are places where elk are forced to move in more predictable ways rather than random guessing that we like to associate with them. Benches that allow efficient side healing, saddles that connect drainages, side hill trails that contour through security cover, pinch points where terrain limits their options. Those are all features that concentrate elk movement. They reduce that randomness and they give you something you can actually hunt because instead of hoping to find elk in some large area, you're now positioning yourself exactly where they're most likely to pass through. You're not hunting where elk are either. You're hunting where they move. And that's what turns scouting into opportunity. If you want scouting to feel fast and actually work, you need a repeatable process. Not necessarily more time, definitely just not more pins, but a system you can run on any map in minutes. Start with step 1. Eliminate that obvious bad country that we talked about. Get rid of anything that lacks security, has poor wind structure, or is overly exposed to pressure. Step 2. Identify the elevation bands. Where are elk most likely to be based on current conditions this season and with the current pressure? That narrows everything down immediately. Step number 3, locate feed and bedding proximity. You're not looking for both separately, right? You're looking for how close they are. Tighter zones create more predictable movement. Step number 4, find movement routes. How do elk travel between feeding and bedding areas? Look for those side hills, those benches, and those natural corridors. Step number 5, identify decision points. Where does movement tighten up? Saddles, pinch points, terrain features that force them to choose. Step 6, pre-plan wind and your access. If you can't approach it clearly or hunt it with the right wind, it's not usable. It's not huntable at that time. Speed comes from having a process. It's not guessing. And once you have that process, everything is going to be more clear and it's going to happen faster for you. And this is where a lot of scouting breaks down. Because finding a spot is not the same as knowing how to hunt a spot. A lot of hunters, they just stop at spot identification. They drop a pin, they label it bedding or elk area, and they move on. Tell me you haven't done that. I know I have. But when they get into the field, that pin doesn't tell them what to do. And that's the problem. Every pin needs to answer three questions, right? Where do I set up? What wind makes this work? And what time does this actually matter, right? Morning, evening? Maybe it's both, but a lot of times it's one or the other. If you can't answer those three questions, then that location isn't ready to hunt yet. It's just a possible idea. So you're going to have to analyze those things. And ideas don't create opportunities, right? Plans do. You got to plan that out. This is the shift that separates average scouting from really effective scouting, right? You stop marking places that look good and you start building locations you can actually execute on because now you're thinking ahead. You know how you're going to approach. You know where you need to be. You know what conditions are going to make it huntable. A pin without a plan is really useless in a lot of ways, right? If it doesn't tell you how to hunt it and you haven't thought through all these things, it's not going to help you when you actually step into the field, right? That's the advanced piece of scouting, and that's when scouting finally starts really working. When this system finally clicks for you, it feels like everything speeds up overnight. Not because elk hunting got easier, but because you stopped wasting so much time without a plan around your spots ahead of time. You're no longer wandering through country hoping to run into elk. You're no longer second guessing every decision, and you're no longer bouncing from spot to spot trying to just figure it out. Now you're moving with intention. You know why you're going somewhere. You know what you're looking for. You know what needs to happen for that area to actually work. And that changes everything. That's why people hire a guide, because the guide has that knowledge. You want that knowledge. I want that knowledge for you because your decisions are going to get faster. You're going to spend more time in actual elk and your encounters become more controlled instead of random. You're not going to be just reacting anymore. You're going to be stepping into situations that already make sense before they happen. And that's why it can feel like cheating. It's not easier. You're just not wasting so much time anymore. You've removed the guesswork. And once that happens, elk hunting stops feeling overwhelming and it starts feeling a lot more predictable. Most elk hunters think getting better at elk takes many, many years. And it can, and it certainly helps. All of those experiences add up. But if you keep doing it the same way, you're going to stay stuck, right? And the truth is, it's not really about time because I'm giving you the keys to the kingdom, right? It's all in how you think. When you stop just collecting information and you start filtering it, everything changes. You eliminate bad country faster. You recognize movement sooner, and you make decisions with confidence instead of hesitation. And that's why this speeds up. Not more effort, but more clarity. Because once you understand how elk actually use terrain, how their movement is shaped, and how to turn that into an actual plan, you're no longer guessing, you're operating with purpose, and that's the real shift. Elk scouting doesn't feel easier, it just stops feeling so random. And when that happens for you, you're going to spend less time searching and more time in elk. That's when this all starts to come together. Now, if you want to go deeper into elk movement, pressure patterns, terrain positioning, and structured decision making, that's exactly why I built the elk hunting series of ebooks. It's a progressive system designed to help you understand how elk actually use country and how to position yourself accordingly. I have a link to those ebooks in the description. If you want hands-on application and real-time breakdowns, we have an in-person Elk Camp 2026 that is built around this same philosophy: structure, preparation, and execution in real terrain. 90% of Elk Camp is going to be running you through as many scenarios as we can. You can check out Elk Camp at backboneunlimited.com. And if you want ongoing access to the Team Backbone community, classroom, my full digital vault of elk resources, private discussions, and direct communication to me for planning, you can join Team Backbone at backboneunlimited.com underneath our membership tab. Everything we talk about here is connected. Preparation is not a single video, it's a system. Thanks for being here. Until next time, train harder, hunt smarter, and never settle.